Meeting to order. If you'll please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I will lead us this evening. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Nita, would you call roll for us, please?
Councilor Martinez?
Here.
Councilor Lorenz?
Here.
Councilor Schleibach?
Here.
Councilor Schrader?
Here.
Mayor Garcia?
Here.
A quorum is declared.
Thank you. So, do we have a motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
Do we have to amend for the exec session?
We should actually do modifications to the agenda this evening. Removing the executive session.
Do we have a motion to modify the agenda, removing the executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? Nita?
Councilor Schleibach?
Aye.
Councilor Lorenz?
Aye.
Councilor Martinez?
Aye.
Councilor Schrader?
Aye.
Mayor Garcia?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay.
I move to approve the modified consent agenda.
Second.
Any other discussion? Nita?
Councilor Lorenz?
Aye.
Councilor Schleibach?
Aye.
Councilor Schrader?
Aye.
Councilor Martinez?
Aye.
Mayor Garcia?
Aye.
Motion carries.
So, moving on to citizens' comments, I guess that's where we're putting you. So, okay.
Is this thing on? Does it need to be on?
It's on.
So I have to say before I start, I thought that was the world's smallest gavel when I was doing court last week, and I was trying to figure out what the heck anybody did with it, because now I know. It's not for the court.
Well, yeah, I think it is for everybody.
Actually, I've never used a gavel.
Okay.
I think we can have enough room in the
There's been a few times I felt like throwing it, but I never have.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Well, so I hope
You would know, Gary, right?
Yes.
I hope if you all have any questions that you'll let me know what your questions are. And first of all, I guess in terms of starting this whole thing, I'm not here to blame anybody about anything or cast any personal aspersions on anyone's character. But I am here to tell you where I think the Monte Vista Municipal Court was deficient and how I think you could improve it, and some of the suggestions that I've already made to the clerks and Nita, following up on some of that. And then like I said, I'm happy to answer any questions if I have the answers, and if I feel real uncomfortable doing my responses in a public setting, then I'll just let you know that, and you guys can figure out what you want to do from there. So, does anybody have any questions before I get started? Was there any particular area that you were interested in or wanted to hear about? All right. So, one of the problems with municipal courts in Colorado is they're not very well regulated. There's very little oversight. But there's like two bodies of law that govern municipalities in Colorado. And one of them is, we have the home rule charter. So certainly you have the local authority for everything. And then you still have to deal with Colorado revised statute. You have to deal with the U.S. Constitution. You have to deal with the Colorado Constitution. So it's not like it was in the old days 100 years ago where, the judge was sentencing judge, he did the trial, and then he prosecuted, and then he did the hanging. I mean, it's just, we have three branches of government. You folks are one, the judiciary is another. And I think that sometimes in smaller towns, things kind of get all slopped together, and then I think that's when we start having problems. So I'll tell you that I did contact the ACLU and let them know that you guys were all trying to make some changes in progress, and I'm hoping the message got relayed to you that they're really not interested in litigating, they just want to see change, and they want to see change in the right direction. And they did tell me to tell you folks that they were really impressed about how proactive you were. And they were grateful for that, and they got enough municipalities and other people to sue and picking on Monte Vista, especially if you're trying to make changes in the right direction. So, I did review the ACLU report. I reviewed it several times, and you know, a lot of the things that they alleged are true. And I know there's been some controversy about the report, that it wasn't fair. Alamos and Monte Vista have been under investigation for several years. It was the worst kept secret in the valley, at least amongst lawyers. People were well aware of the allegations, and they were well aware of some of the shortcomings of municipal court. And one of the things that I wanted to point out to y'all in reviewing the municipal court rules is you're supposed to be, a judge is supposed to be a resident of the county where that municipality is located. And that's right in the Colorado Rules of Municipal Code. And you know, I know that all kind of happened 5, 6, 7 years ago. I'm not even really sure how far back, but that's something you need to think about in terms of your next judge. Is the rules are pretty clear and pretty plain that we're a Class C county. So Class C counties have certain rules about who can be judges and what they have to do. And it's all based on population. And anyway, so your judge needs to be a resident of Rio Grande County. They don't have to be a resident of the city of Monte Vista unless there's a city ordinance that says that. But at the very least, they need to be a resident of the county where the municipality is located. So that's something you folks need to take into consideration when you're going through all this. Now, Colorado has made a lot of changes to municipal courts in the last 3 years, and if the city of Monte Vista wants to continue to prosecute people and put them in jail, they're going to have to make some significant changes in the delivery of services to criminal defendants. Starting January 1st this year, if a person is picked up on an active Monte Vista warrant, the jail, say Rio Grande County, has 4 hours to get in contact with somebody from the city and let them know that this person's in custody, and they have to be advised by a judge. A lot of cities are putting in like 24-hour call systems, but that's something that you folks are going to have to think about and probably pay for if you want to continue to issue warrants and put people in jail for municipal ordinance violations. You know, I think the biggest, so that's one. And then there's another one, there's another change coming July 1st. Anytime a person is picked up on an active municipal warrant, they're entitled to counsel. So, and the city's going to have to pay for that. And I know that Mr. Gibbons has been kind enough to fill in. I don't know how much longer he would be willing to do it at $75 an hour. But, you know, most cities have a list of private lawyers that they put together to provide defense work. And because you're not a state agency or a county agency, you don't get the services of the state public defender. The city's going to have to pay, the municipality, Monte Vista is going to have to pay for it. And I don't think it's cheap. And I can say the going rate, like on federal public defender cases, is well over $100 an hour. And in the state, the rate varies depending on the nature of the felony or misdemeanor. So that's something that you folks need to have in place. And right now, if someone is picked up or even brought to court, they need to be advised of the first appearance, their arraignment, that they have a right to counsel if it's a jailable offense. And in my review of case files, I think that was lacking. And that's a problem, because you have to properly advise people of their rights in order to properly take a guilty plea or not guilty plea. So, and unless you take jail off the table, you're going to have to pay for a lawyer. And I can tell you that when I appeared in this court as a criminal defense lawyer, you know, you're easily looking at $750,000, and that's not a jury trial. So, as I said, that's going to cost money for the city if they want to continue to do that. But the main thing is they have to have, the city court needs to have procedures in place to guarantee due process. And I think that's maybe where municipal court got a little lost, because they didn't have a lot of procedures in place. A person needs to get into court, they get arraigned, they get advised of the charges, the possible penalties, of their constitutional rights, including their right to an attorney if it's a jailable offense. Not every offense that the city has is jailable. So like traffic infractions are not jailable. They're usually punished by fines and points, and then the fines, points, whatever, get reported to the Department of Revenue. One of the things the clerks and I have talked about doing is there's quite a few outstanding, well, I'm not going to call them even outstanding judgments, but I will call them active warrants on cases where people have failed to make payment. My suggestion, what I've advised the clerks to do is anytime it's traffic, just turn that over to the Department of Revenue, because what's going to happen is the Department of Revenue is going to hold on that person's license. And that is a low budget motivator for people to pay what they owe, because they're going to have to go pay, clear the warrant, clear the cost with the city, and then they'll have to get a clearance letter, and then they go to DMV, and then they have to get a clearance on their license. That doesn't involve jail. It really doesn't involve a whole lot of effort because everything is set up electronically. The clerks know the right form to send to the Department of Revenue / Department of Motor Vehicles. So that's one thing. In terms of the other cases that the city has, the city's enacted an ordinance that says, I believe it's 10 days to 90 days in jail is the maximum amount you can get on a city ordinance violation. And the maximum fine is up to $1,000. In most municipalities, the maximum fine is $2,650, and you can get up to 1 year in jail. Now, I'm not suggesting that the city needs to increase the fine amount, nor necessarily the jail amount. I just want you to know where Monte Vista kind of falls in comparison with a lot of the other municipalities. I did notice that the model traffic code here hasn't been updated since 2011. And certainly the costs and fines, because the city's adopted the model traffic code, those have all been updated and gone up accordingly over the years. And I think Nita's working with the chief of police on that. The other thing I noticed is that I call it a cheat sheet. I actually had to borrow one from one of the officers, but it lists their, so when they write the tickets out, you get pulled over for, say, I don't know, running a stop sign or something. They write out a ticket for you. It'll say the penalty assessment, costs, all that stuff. So what the police officers are using is not what's in the city code. So that has to merge. Either use the one the police officers are using or use the one that's in your city code. You had the same issue with court costs. I noticed the former judge was imposing $50 court cost surcharge, but I think your ordinance is, say, $25. Again, I mean, it's not consistent. You need to get on the same page all the time. It's all about consistency and procedure, really. And the more your court does these things, the more rote a lot of the stuff will become, and the much more efficient. We had court twice last week, and my feeling was that there was quite a bit of stuff, quite a few cases on the docket that probably didn't need to be there. I would say there was an inordinate number of cases that were set for payment review, and so basically what you have is a courtroom full of people coming up and explaining why they haven't paid their $17.50 for the month. I don't think that's a good use of resources. I don't think it's a good use of your clerk's time. I don't think it's a good use of your files. I don't think it's a good use of your judge's time. And for a lot of these cases, if the only thing the person did wrong was fail to pay, and they're non-jailable offenses, they're not supposed to go to jail. I mean, that's where the court got in trouble. People were going to jail for failure to make payment on cases that were not jailable offenses. And I mean, I will tell you, as a sitting judge in Rio Grande County, I saw people with Monte Vista holds on them, and they were in jail a long time before the city had them down here and advised them. And they weren't being held on, they were being held in Rio Grande County for $45 a day, and they weren't being held on Rio Grande cases. They were being held on municipal ordinance violations or failure to appear. Really very, in my mind, sort of minute, non-threatening, non-violent offenses. So, so I think that's where your court got into problems. It was that kind of, it was those kinds of issues that were a problem. And you can talk to any Rio Grande County deputy, and they will have stories about inmates that were being held for the city, and they will say that they called every day to get that person down here and get them advised, and sometimes it was weeks before they can get somebody into court. So you have to have regular, consistent docket days. You've got to have a system set up for advisements if you're going to have people be in jail. You're going to have to do it video or electronically, or I don't know how you want to do it, but that's just something that comes with the territory of prosecuting people. If you're going to prosecute people, which is fine, I mean, that's the municipality's right, you have to do it right. You have to afford them due process. You have to afford them constitutional protections. It's expensive. One of the things I have long thought, just as a lawyer, is I never understood why the city didn't just turn a lot of their, I would call them more serious cases, over to the state. The public defender's paid for, the courtroom's paid for, the jail is paid for. I mean, it costs nothing to the city except for the investigative resources involved with the police department initially to turn some of those more serious cases over to the state. And the truth is the state has a lot more resources. They can put people on probation. They can require them to do inpatient drug treatment. They can require them to do jail as a condition of probation. I mean, some of the county courts, you can sentence people up to 2 years. But probably the most important thing is they have resources. They can send people to drug treatment, and that's obviously a big problem in our community right now. And I will also tell you, as a lawyer, that there were times when we had drug treatment set up for people in custody in Rio Grande County, and the only reason they didn't get to go was because they had a municipal ordinance violation hold on them. And I think that's shameful, frankly. I mean, with the problems we have in this community, I think that, that bothered me a lot. It bothered me a lot as a community member, it bothered me a lot as a lawyer, and it bothered me a lot as a judge. And there's nothing I can do about it. You guys can do something about that. But that's going to be up to you. I was trying to go through some of the things you're going to have to do that are going to cost more money, and then certainly you're going to have to provide lawyers. If you decide that you want to change some of your municipal ordinance violations so that they don't carry jail, that's probably your least expensive way to do all this. Because if a judge can advise somebody up front, this is the charge, this is the possible sentence, and this is not a jailable offense, they're not entitled to a free defense lawyer at that point. So basically, they're not even, in most of those cases, they're not even entitled to a jury trial. So that, again, I think would save the city quite a bit of money and, resources. Again, I mean, where are you going to get the most bang for your buck? I know why cities hang on to cases. I'm not naive, and I know that in some cases belong in city court because you got the local community kind of deciding things. The other issue, one of the other issues I noticed was like restitution. Restitution's a really big deal in state court. So we had somebody in here last week and the defendant has stolen $200 from her. And so instead of ordering, I did impose a fine and court costs and stuff, but I ordered that she be paid back first. Because in the state system, the first thing you want to do is make your victim whole. You want to take care of your community members. And I would think that you all would want to do the same thing. But you don't have anything written that says that. And so I didn't see any cases where I saw restitution imposed first. It was, if I saw it at all, and I'm not even sure I did, it would have been imposed last, after the court costs, after the surcharges and fines and all that. And that's just backwards. It really should be, you should be taking care of your victims, you should be taking care of your community people, and then worry about all these other court costs and whatnot. You know, $200 may not be much to a lot of people, but if you're somebody who had $200 stolen, you know, it should go to that victim first. And I think that studies show that if you have a defendant who's actually got to hand some money over to somebody they stole from, I mean, that goes a lot further in terms of rehabilitation and accountability and responsibility, you know, than them being on the bottom of some list that'll take you 5 years to pay. Monte Vista has some really old cases. You have active warrants from, what would we decide, 2008 or 2009?
2007.
2007. I mean, so I recognize a lot of the names in the file. Some of these people, you know, they were in high school when these things happened. And, you know, one of these days they're going to have a traffic stop and this warrant's going to pop up. And I can't imagine how angry they're going to be when they see they have an active warrant from a traffic infraction or something from that many years ago. You know, that all needs to be cleaned up. And we did close out quite a few files because the municipal court loses jurisdiction after a year. So if you haven't been able to collect your money or fines or any of that sort of stuff, you got to move that to a closed file. And Monte Vista has a lot of open files, and they're old, really old. So I think that that's something that has to be addressed, and we're kind of working our way through the... We started with the more recent cases and then kind of working our way backwards. My first concern, frankly, was trying to figure out who we had in jail on Monte Vista warrants, and then determine why the warrant was issued. In most cases, it was a failure to pay, and there's a way to backdoor that issue. So what happens is you order somebody to pay X amount of dollars every month. You order them to come to court once a month. And then when they don't have the money, they quit coming to court, and then you issue a warrant for failure to appear. So you go from an offense that's not jailable to all of a sudden you're in contempt of court because you're not showing up. And I understand why these folks aren't showing up, because they're afraid. And I also understand as a judge how frustrating it is when people don't show up for court. But that was why a lot of the people were in jail. And again, you know, if you have a case where somebody owes $110 and you're paying $45 a day to keep them in jail, to me, unless there's some important principle at stake, the common sense dictates that you do something different. Nita and I talked about having community service as an option, maybe in lieu of jail. And there may be some liability issues, and if there are, you know, that's something that'll have to be addressed. But a lot of municipalities do useful public service instead of jail because it's cheaper. And I'd much rather see someone out raking leaves and picking up garbage than wearing an orange jumpsuit and watching TV. I mean, that's just my feeling. But that would require some changes in terms of your municipal ordinances and stuff. So I think in terms of the warrants that have been issued, most municipal courts send a letter out. And in fact, I was just talking to Rebecca Mahoney about that. And they say, basically, get yourself in here in 30 days or we're going to issue a warrant, and they might even include a copy of the warrant. And then at 30 days, you know, if they haven't done what they're supposed to do, then at that point, you know, maybe issue the warrant. But the key there is you have to give them advice quickly. You can't leave them in jail for 3 or 4 weeks at a time. First of all, it's against the law. It's going to cost you a horrendous amount of money. And it's much better to get their attention up front, deal with it quickly, get them advised, and, you know, get things moving that way. I would think 35% of the docket from last week, as I said, were failure to pay payment reviews. And the cases went 4 or 5 years back. And that's a lot of court appearances for people to be making. It's very disruptive to their lives. And again, I'm not sure that it was the best use of resources for the city to be doing that. The other cases we saw, one of the things I did was when people came in and they came in for sentencing, I had them affirm their guilty pleas because it wasn't clear to me that they were properly advised in the beginning. So rather than have like a wholesale people withdrawing their pleas and starting over and creating more work for everybody, it was easier for me to say, okay, jail's off the table. I know you didn't have a lawyer. You know, so your choices are, you know, withdraw your plea, allow you to do that today, or affirm the plea, go, you know, and we'll do sentencing today, and jail's not an option. And most people, in fact, I think almost everyone chose to affirm their plea. You know, and I think that was a good way to resolve it. I think we protected the integrity of the due process for the court, and I think we also protected the people's rights. And I think that most of the people that came here last week appreciated that. So this is a kinder, gentler approach. You know, we can't do business the way we did 100 years ago with this sort of thing. And you know, the city, this court, you know, it's a reflection on you all. And when people feel like they're not being treated fairly, they're not coming back here to visit, and they're not coming back here to spend money. People want to know that they can go into court and be treated fairly. You know, I certainly sentence people and they're not happy about it, but I hope at least when they leave the courtroom they feel like they were treated fairly and with some respect. And I think that's probably the most, you know, we can do for a lot of those folks. So I'm trying to think, let me see, I had a couple other issues. I did talk to you about the restitution stuff. Model traffic code. So talking to the ACLU again, they are not, like I said, they're not interested in litigating anything against the city. I do suspect, not because they told me, that the city will be on their radar for a while. And the city has been on the radar for a couple of years. That's why ACLU was requesting all the records from here, which I'm sure cost you a lot of time too, because she was sending recordings and copies of files, right? I mean, it takes a lot of time to be doing that stuff. So I think that it really is to the city's benefit, if you will, to get out from under that microscope, look at things right, and then you don't have to worry about it. I mean, I'll bet you spent a good day a month sending records to the ACLU. And I'm sure Alan also had to do the same thing. So you have to decide how you want to proceed here. You have to decide if you want to keep jail on the table, if you only want to keep it on the table for certain things, if you want to have more things go into state court, where a lot of things are paid for. You have to figure out what you want to do about restitution to your community members that are victimized. I don't know. Do you guys have any questions?
I've got a long list of them. If
Shoot.
you've got some time. Well, first and foremost, you made a comment about it was the worst kept secret among the lawyers.
Yeah.
That's kind of disconcerting to me because I feel like I have a decent, I'm not saying I'm an expert, but I have a decent understanding of the law, and yet most of what you said here tonight is not something that I would expect any municipal official to completely understand. And so I'm going, why did nobody give us this information before, and whose responsibility is it to give that information to the city council?
I don't know that it's anybody's responsibility in general, or even specifically. I know the court here and the court in Alamosa was of concern to most of the lawyers in the community. And I suspect if you ask them, they will say, well, I told so-and-so on the council. I told so-and-so on the council. And not much happened. So, I think that what you have to do is you have to put some procedures and safeguards in place. And, I don't think you should be micromanaging your judge. That would be really inappropriate. But I think that there are things you can do, such as when I accepted the contract from you all, I said, I'm going to be bound by the Colorado state judicial ethics guidelines. A municipal judge doesn't have a particular set of ethical guidelines they have to follow. They're not regulated by state judicial or anybody else. But the reason I wanted those guidelines there is because I think that they're important, and I think going forward, any contract you make with somebody should include those ethics. I mean, they're well thought out, they're fairly straightforward, and and then you can hold that person responsible to the ethics, and that being the term of their contract. You can control it that way.
So just like we adopted the model traffic code, then should we not adopt the
Well, I think whoever you...
code of ethics?
Yeah, well, it's a judicial code of ethics, so I think when you get your new judge on board, I think it should, my recommendation would be that it be part of the contract, even because it's not required by state law in Colorado for municipal judges to follow any particular code of ethics. There isn't one. So, why not set the bar high? You got to follow the same rules as the state court judges. You have to do things right. You have to treat people with respect. You can't, those are, appearance of fairness is everything in a small community. And that's big in the judicial code of ethics too. You don't want to let people think that you're favoring one party over another, or that you're mad at this person, so you're going to take it out on them.
Well, and I guess I'd just go back again to, we can put these things in place, but how do we know for sure? Because obviously, I don't want to micromanage the court. I don't think that's a good way forward.
No, it's not.
And yet at the same time, how do we know that those code of ethics are being followed?
Well, first of all, I think you have to vet your candidates really well. I think you need to check with the Colorado State Bar Association. You need to see if there's complaints filed, if there's been, Colorado, the State Bar Association regulates attorneys. If someone's been in trouble, it'll be on their record that they've been sanctioned or reprimanded, so that should be one of your steps in vetting your lawyers. That's probably where you're going to get most of your information is from the state bar. You have to use a vetting process. I think that you have to ask people, ask lawyers. They're going to, I think most, not all lawyers, and I might be blunter than some, but I think most lawyers who care about the community and care about doing things right will say, yeah, I got some concerns about that person, and here's why. So there's got to be a vetting process. You can't just bring somebody in and say, okay, you get to be the judge. You got to vet it. I mean, this is your representative in some ways to your community and to people who come and visit. This is the taste of Monte Vista that they're going to have. They're not going to know if you are good people or not good people. All they're going to know is that they appeared down here in front of somebody who maybe they didn't think they got treated very fairly, and they're not coming back. So, you got to vet. I really think the vetting process is important, and I think that checking with the State Bar Association is a good place to go with that. Find out what the issues have been. Ask the judges. They may or may not tell you. Ask the lawyers who've been here forever. They'll tell you. Lawyers are like anything else. We get reputations, Oh, that person has a really honest reputation. Oh, that person's a doofus. It's like anything else. People get reputations after they've been here a while, and I think most people would probably volunteer their opinion, at least in a coffee shop or something. So that's what I'd recommend, is a good vetting process.
So what happens if, in this vetting process, we don't find anyone in the county that meets what we're looking for? If we have to hire somebody from the county?
Well, then...
is there a way... We want the best candidate for our
absolutely.
Judge, but in a small county, we don't have many choices.
Right, and the state courts have the same problem.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the pool is small. I honestly don't know the answer to that. I suspect if that happened, then you could do something with your municipal charter and say, if we can't find anybody suitable in the county, then we're going to stay within the local judicial district, because we have 6 counties in this judicial district. Most of the lawyers practice Alamosa, Rio Grande County, but if you maybe include the 12, you've still got a local person, which I think is important. The knowledge of the community is really important. We have 2 of the poorest counties per capita in the country in the 12th judicial district. So as a judge, when I'm determining appropriate sentences that involve money, I'm mindful of that. And judges are supposed to be making a decision when they impose those sorts of things as to whether or not that person has the ability to pay. I mean, that's a finding that the courts need to make. So it's a process, it's a hearing. You talk to the person, you find out. We had somebody in court last week, and I think ability to pay was an issue. So we had them fill out basically the public defender application, because it's a good sort of overall indigency application to see, do these people have the ability to pay or not. One of the things that I noticed, and this came up on the docket, I think, you had a couple of cases here where you had juvenile offenders. Municipalities are pretty limited about what they can do with juveniles, because there's a whole separate court form on the state system. There's a whole separate set of revised statutes for juveniles. So they're treated different, and they should be, because they're kids, right? But in a couple of cases, I noticed that the parents, one of them was a runaway juvenile, and the other juvenile, I think, had been relocated to California, kind of like a foster care situation. But those parents were coming in once a month, or once every 2 months, to report to the court about whether they'd had any contact with the child. Well, that's unduly burdensome. The court had long lost jurisdiction over those people. What's the purpose there? What are you accomplishing? I mean, these parents don't have the kid's on run status. I mean, what are they going to do? I mean, nothing. And these cases were, I think, from 3 years ago, 2015, I think. So you got to be kind of careful with some of that stuff. Even as a state court judge, I have limited things. I have limited jurisdiction, and municipal court judges even have more limited jurisdiction in terms of what they can and can't do. You guys need to decide as a board, as a council, do we want to be prosecuting juveniles? Do we want to send them to state court where there's more resources? Underage drinking tickets, sure. There's a great program in Alamosa called the Traffic Circle in substance abuse. I forget the name of the program right now, but yeah, it's a really good program. I sentence kids there all the time. And then they come back to court, they show me they've completed the program, and more often than not, the case gets dismissed. But it works. The recidivism rate for the kids who go through that program is really low, which is what we want. We want our kids to take advantage, be able to take advantage of those opportunities. So, anything else? Give me your best question. Come on, take your best shot.
Just got a number of questions, but the big one, I guess, that I've been thinking about is, you mentioned that the traffic code hadn't been updated since 2011.
That's what it looks like to me, and you have to understand that my priority was really current cases, people in jail, bonds and stuff, but when I was going through the model traffic code, I noticed discrepancies, and the most recent update I found was from 2011. I'm not saying it's not buried on a bookshelf somewhere. It could be. But I think certainly some attention needs to be paid to that so that you take advantage of the changes in the law in terms of costs and fines.
I guess my question would be, is that an annual thing that should be done?
Well, the model traffic code is updated on an annual basis. And typically, and you may even receive those updates as part of whatever associations you belong to. But I mean, it's frequently updated, so once a year you want to update all your code books and stuff. The thing is, you have adopted the model traffic code as a city, so the question is, in my mind, I was thinking, well, you've already adopted it, should these updates be occurring just, on an annual basis. But I think because the updates involve costs and fines and that sort of thing, you probably ought to approve any, you ought to consider that as a council and think about whether you're going to approve the increased costs or fines or whatever.
Well, it should be an annual.
But it should be an
item on the
annual review.
agenda, just like all the organizations that receive annual donations.
Yeah,
It should be an.
It should be an annual review. At least give it some, 5 or 10 minutes worth of thought. And, if you think it's time to raise some things, then you vote to, you guys deal with that as a council. If you're not worried about it, then don't worry about it. But certainly the police officers' model traffic code sheet they're using and the city's model traffic code have to be the same. You're supposed to have those things published. Court costs are supposed to be published. That's really minor, those are minor issues in my mind, but I think the more transparency you can have as a court, the better. The more people are going to believe that they're being treated fairly, that they're not being singled out. So I'm a big advocate of publishing costs and fines and what people can expect when they come to court. I really am. The other thing you folks need to think about are interpreter services. We had an interpreter here last week. I forgot his name, but as you prosecute cases with jailable offenses, you're going to have to provide those services. Most municipal courts don't have the judge prosecuting the case. That seems to be what was happening here. And I think I kind of know how, I think I understand the history of it. Typically in Monte Vista and Alamosa, the only time a city prosecutor would get involved with the case is if the other person had a lawyer. And so what that does, it puts the judge in the position of prosecuting the case. And that's not a judiciary function. That's a function of your city prosecutor. That's a function of your executive branch. That's not a judicial function. And again, it's going to be the cost of doing business in this day and age. I did talk to Karen about coming to court maybe one afternoon a month, and what we would do is set what we call pretrial conferences so that people could come and talk to her about their case, present their evidence, and she could decide what she wanted, if she wanted to plea bargain with them, what she wanted to offer them, then tell me what the prospective offer is or the proposal, and then, I accept it or reject it and sentence accordingly. Everything gets taken care of most of the time on one day. But the thing is, you have a separate person looking at those reports and a separate person prosecuting. The judge, it's really inappropriate for a judge to be prosecuting cases. It's way outside the judicial function. So if you're going to continue to prosecute cases in the jails, you're going to have to you're going to have to pay somebody to pre-try your cases, to be available, regardless of whether there's a lawyer on the other side or not. That shouldn't be the deciding factor. It goes a lot. It's way beyond all that. And I know things got set up a long time ago, and things just kind of continued on their way, but you just can't do that anymore. Or you're going to have the ACLU breathing down your neck. Anything else?
Any other cost savings that you would recommend as far as staff?
Well, I think I think we talked about getting rid of a lot of dead weight on your docket, the failures to pay, reviews, you get rid of all those, or most of them. And as I said, the court lost jurisdiction over a lot of those cases a long time ago. I think I did talk to the clerks about becoming more proactive with collections. And I don't mean like knocking on their doors or anything in the middle of the night, but reminding people that they owe the money, and if they don't, so calling them. The studies have shown that that's actually, the state's had good luck with that sort of reminding people that they need to get this paid, or they need to come in and set up a payment program, that sort of thing. Have your clerks kind of keep track of that, at least in-house for a while. Have somebody keep track of it so you know where you're at, and then at some point, if you decide that it's more trouble than it's worth, you either close the case or ship it to outside collections, or, yeah, I mean, more often than not, you may decide you're going to close the case. I don't know, but again, you got to be aware of how much you're trying to get from these folks and what their ability to pay is. And a lot of times, not everyone, but a lot of these people are kind of living hand to mouth anyway. And you know, as my grandma used to say, you can't squeeze blood out of a turnip. So at what point do you cut your losses and say, well, the resources are better. But I think having one of your clerks in charge of that on a consistent basis is a good idea. Have the same clerk do the, you know, fill out the ability to pay form if there's an ability to pay argument. Maybe have that same clerk also do the indigency determination, so that you got one person kind of keeping track of some of the financial stuff. In talking to the clerks, I think we all agree that one clerk could probably handle the courtroom. To me, it was a real luxury to have two clerks in court, because I generally have one clerk, and I go through a lot more cases on a county docket than you guys have. But I think, you know, as we become used to each other and get some procedures in place, you have some software, things like that. I mean, I think we could do it with one clerk, which would free up the other clerk to do other things. I talked to the chief of police about courtroom security. I think there needs to be courtroom security. I think it's important to have one officer at the entrance over here wanting people for weapons. Obviously, that's a big problem right now. And maybe, you know, one other officer in court. But unless, you know, unless there's somebody that we know is going to be troublesome or something, you know, your officers are probably better off on the streets. You know, they don't need to be, unless they want to be in here, and that's a different deal. That's a different story. But you know, you don't need 3 officers in court, I don't think, unless you get somebody coming in that you know is going to be a problem. You know, I think the scanning wanting I think that's a must. You have to do that. You have to check people for weapons. You know, they shouldn't be bringing guns and knives into court. They just shouldn't. So that's the thing, cost-saving idea I have. I'm trying to think what else I had for cost-savings ideas. Oh, the Colorado municipal rules allow the different municipalities to set up what they call like traffic violation bureaus. So there's like a set schedule for, like, if, let's say you get a 4-point traffic violation, okay, standard practice is you complete it out to 2 points, this is the fine, these are the costs, and they don't even have to show up in court. That would save you all a lot of time. And then if they don't pay the costs and fines, then that case gets turned over to the Department of, well, they get reported to the Department of Revenue on the cost, but then if there's, excuse me, on the points, but if there's a lot of unpaid costs, those would get automatically reported too. That doesn't involve a judge. You know, in my mind, it should be one person, or maybe 2 people, but that at the most. And the main thing there is to be consistent. You know, have your costs and fines, everything should be published, so people, Joe Blow isn't getting treated different than, you know, Jane Doe. You know, come in, you can get or if you haven't had any traffic violations, you can get it deferred. You know, and usually on those kind of cases in Rio Grande County, if I give people a deferred, it's on a traffic, I impose a little bit higher fine because they're getting the benefit of not having points reported. You know, and a lot of times people are happy to pay it because their insurance rates won't go up. So I think that as you folks make some decisions about how you want your cases prosecuted and the whole jail issue, I think there'll be some natural areas of cost saving. And the biggest cost savings I see is what you pay for jail and the cost of defense lawyers, because you'll have to start providing those, and you'll have to figure out what you're going to do in January with the people picked up on warrants. How you're going to, you know, need a volunteer to be on call 24 hours a day. Well, I don't think that's particularly good for her or anybody else. You're going to have to get a system in place. The other thing I think you could do in here is you really need a panic button for the clerks or for the judge or somebody. And I don't know how you do it, but it should go back to your police department. That's a big security thing. And it may cut down on the number of officers you need in the courtroom if you have some sort of a panic button. Your recording system, judges are human beings, and we all say things in court that we wish we hadn't said. But the biggest difference between this court and courts I've practiced in is that there's a mute button. So, if I want to say something to the clerks, it's not recorded and broadcasted. And some of the problems the previous court had were comments that, he probably intended to be off the record. And we all make them, believe me. But most of us have the ability to, to mute it if we're going to say something that we don't want on the record. And so sometimes you have conferences with lawyers and stuff at the bench. Those, a lot of times, should be muted off the record. But you folks don't have an ability for the judge or your court to do that. And I don't know what it would involve, but I think that that's something you're going to have to do. Because I think that's caused some problems that probably didn't need to be there. Again, I'm not indicting anybody. I've certainly made plenty of comments I wish I hadn't have. Fortunately, I had a mute button. Sometimes you just want to express an opinion to your clerk. You want to tell her about lunch. I don't know, but it doesn't all need to be, everything doesn't need to be laid out there. Plus, people want to have confidential conversations, lawyers, bench conferences. So, I do think he would save a lot of money with the jail stuff and the public defender stuff. And I hope that you're all right with having the city prosecutor come in one afternoon a month and doing pretrial conferences, because I think that will also weed out a lot of cases so you can decide where you want to spend your resources and where you don't.
Would you say that the closed circuit television that we've had installed with all the technology, has that been underutilized, or is there a way that we can do that better?
Well, what I can tell you is I haven't had the opportunity to use it because I don't believe there's anybody in custody right now on any Monte Vista warrants, so there's not been the need to advise in them. I'll also tell you from my perspective, both ends of the electronic communication have to be skilled. And so, for instance, today I think we had a new deputy in courtroom when we were doing electronic advisements, and he pressed the mute button accidentally or something. So, obviously that's not going to work. So you got to have somebody on the other end who knows what they're doing also. I think that could probably be better utilized, and I think in light of the new law that's going to start January 1 regarding the communication between jail and courts advisements, that's something that definitely should be utilized. It'll save on mileage, it'll save on officers' appearances, that sort of thing. So, from what I understand, you all have state-of-the-art equipment for that.
Well, we just found that out about 6 months ago that we could utilize that at the county at the technology. We just didn't have it on our end, and we decided to try to do that to cut down on some of the officer time.
Yeah, transport
cost.
time,
Yeah.
sure. That makes a lot of sense to me, especially as you're farming people out to different jails. The other thing I do that I think you folks should think about is allowing telephone conferences. If I have somebody on a speeding ticket and they live in Florida, I'll do it mostly over the phone. They'll still have to be responsible for points, costs, and all that sort of thing, but there really is no reason in the world not to have that done over the phone. That saves costs. And that saves resources too. I think not everybody needs to pay money to fly to Colorado to deal with a minor traffic infraction. I think the other thing that'll save you money is if I'm taking a guilty plea from someone, I try to do the sentencing on the same day because I don't want them to have to drive back here for sentencing. That will save you money over time because you're not going to be using the resources for another court appearance and printing their name out again and doing another file on them. I would try to get as many of your files on electronic as you can. Right now you have, everything's paper files. So, you know, most courts are electronic, you know, and when I'm in court, I can pull up somebody's file and enter some things when my hand's not all bunged up, and I can pull it up anywhere, anytime. You know, I think that will save you all money. It'll save the clerks having to put files together. So we're streamlining some procedures. We're going to have regular advisement forms at the arraignment. We're going to have regular forms we're going to use for when somebody wants to plead guilty or no contest. You know, I think that'll save some time too. We're trying to get as many procedures as we can sort of in place and consistent. I think that's the big thing, consistent. I think you're going to have to get a contract with some lawyers, though, for your defense work. As I said, Mr. Gibbons has been pretty patient, but you know, I'm sure there's some other lawyers out there you could contract with. Basically, you contract with an hourly rate or something, or certain kinds of cases you get $500 or you know, whatever. But, anything else?
From my perspective, you know, I think, you know, we didn't know about any of the investigation stuff before, and then now seeing, you know, where the deficiencies are in the court, and, you know, I think, you know, some of this stuff happened apart before most of us ever got on council, but, you know, now we have the ability to make the corrections, do what's right, and being able to not only streamline the court process as a whole, but then making sure that we're doing right by the citizens as well too. And I think that that's something that I was looking for in the report to see, specifics like what we need to improve on it and what was deficient before. And it sounds like we have a lot of work to do, and, you know, just sounds like a lot of time that, you know, nobody really dealt with it or never brought it up. And now that we have that opportunity, I think it's a good chance to, you know, really put some reform, be proactive with this, and try to do what's right.
I think the city got caught in a time warp. I mean, I think the way that things were set up were the way they were probably set up 15 or 20 years ago. And obviously times have changed, and laws have changed, and, you know, it's a different world. So, I mean, like I said, I'm not here to blame anybody for anything. I just think that and what I would concentrate on, if you'll allow me, is I would concentrate on, I would really figure out what you want to do with the jail, because that's what's costing you the money. That's what's costing you the defense. That's what's you're going to have to pay for the public defender thing. So you need to figure out, you know, how badly you want jail, how badly you want a municipal judge to be able to sentence somebody to jail, because the state court judges always have that option. And, you know, theoretically, the district attorney, the state district attorney should be listening to the local law enforcement as to, you know, what their desires are on a case. Not that that should control what happens, but it's certainly another, you know, it's a voice they should be paying attention to, and they should be talking to victims. You know, they have a whole victims advocacy program set up too. The city doesn't have that. You know, they'll work with the victims. They'll get a restitution in the court file, so I'll know how much restitution to order for somebody. You know, and I can make sure that that person gets paid first. You know, I can make sure that person's made whole. But the way we're set up, you don't have the resources for it. It's expensive. Any other questions, Matt? Yeah. Do you have any more questions? You know, you guys got a lot of good people here. I think you can make the changes you need to make. I think people are genuinely interested in treating people well and doing right. So I appreciate the opportunity to get involved. It's been kind of fun for me in a way. It's something different than from what I usually do. So if you have other questions at some point, or you think of something later, feel free to give me a call. Nita's got my cell phone, and you can always email me or something. Okay?
I appreciate you coming in, and we appreciate your input greatly.
Huh?
So now is the time in our meeting when we welcome any unscheduled comments. So if there's anyone here this evening that would like to address council, now is your time. We ask you to please come up to the podium, state your name for the record, and please be aware that we cannot make any formal actions on any requests just under citizens' comments, but we welcome any comments that you have. Is there anyone this evening that would like to?
I'm not going to take 4 minutes, but if the council remembers that on our memorial, the people people recognize the people that took part. They recognize the fire department, but one thing they didn't recognize what the people that did a lot of work to get that memorial presentable. And I think the city works and grounds should be recognized before how they got everything all cleaned up, and the red walkways was all cleaned, but they were never mentioned. So I just think that here at the council meeting that Rob and his men need to be thanked for getting everything presentable, because no matter what all the speakers and everything took place, if that place didn't look good, it wouldn't have made it as good as it was. So I think Rob and his men should be congratulated.
Wayne, if I could address that. I haven't seen the article in the journal, but I wrote the article to the journal. And if it didn't get in there, I did thank the Monte Vista Public Works, and I did thank Rob Vance specifically.
If I overlooked it, please excuse me, but it was mainly most of the people that took part. But I think Rob and his staff needs a little, what am I saying, a little bigger notice headlines.
Pastor, truly appreciate that, and yes, Debbie, your article was in there and it did make mention of myself and Public Works. I appreciate that, and I'll make sure the guys understand one thing, I might coordinate, but it's really my men that out there busting their butts, and they're the ones that deserve the credit. I come by and show up every once in a while, but they're the ones that go out there and do it. So I do appreciate that, thank you very much. Thank you.
Is there anyone else this evening?
Good evening, councilors, Miss Mayor. Sorry about that. First of all, I want to apologize. I'm really casual. It was my day off and I went fishing and I didn't shave and watched my grandson play basketball. So I mean no disrespect whatsoever, but I did want to drop in. I'm the manager at the Chamber of Commerce now. I haven't had the opportunity to meet you, Councilor Lorenz. I wanted to thank the city and the city manager and Azarel in particular for the business development seminars that were hosted last night at the Chamber of Commerce. It was well attended. It was fantastic information. It was right on the spot for the kinds of things that the city needs to know, citizen businesses need to know. And I really appreciate the effort that your staff put forward. I think that we look forward to working in partnership with the city more on this kind of stuff as part of the chamber. And we look forward to moving forward in Monte Vista with more business development seminars, more health seminars, more community education seminars at the facility over there. And whatever we can do in partnership together, I look forward to working together. So I just wanted to introduce myself and thank staff. So I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming.
Yep.
Appreciate that. Is there anyone else this evening that would like to address council? Okay, moving on to our public hearing. We have a special review use for a placement of a manufactured home Class A at 502 Bronx Street in Monte Vista.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and it's actually just a public meeting is required rather than a hearing, and that's my error on the top of the memo I sent you. Later on I did cover that. That's what our code actually requires is a meeting, not a hearing. We did duly notice that we're having a meeting on this. The Planning Commission did have a public hearing on this matter Monday. As you all know, you showed up at the end of that for a workshop. So what you have is a special review use application for lots 5 and 6, block 3 of the Mahovich, I don't know if I'm saying that right, Mahovich subdivision, which is now properly addressed as 502 Bronx Street. The applicant, Cody Sullivan, is here this evening and certainly available for any questions. The Planning Commission did review the application. We received no public comments regarding the application. And basically this is for the siting of a Class A manufactured home on a residential low density lot. Under our current code, it requires a special review use hearing and application from the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission did recommend to the City Council that this application be approved. The application meets all of the city standards and requirements for a developed site, and this will be a Class A manufactured home on a permanent foundation. We did at the public hearing have a number of neighbors to the, which is currently a vacant lot, show up and testify in favor of this. They were actually very happy not only have Mr. Sullivan as a neighbor, but also to see that lot be used because it has been in, let's say, disrepair for ever, I guess. So if you have any questions of the applicant or me, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, both the Planning Commission and staff would recommend that you approve this special review use.
Does council have any questions for Mr. Sullivan? Wishes of council?
I make a motion that we approve the placement of a manufactured home Class A at 502 Bronx Street in Monte Vista.
Second.
Any other discussion? Nita?
Councilor Schleybach?
Aye.
Councilor Lorenz?
Aye.
Councilor Martinez?
Aye.
Councilor Schrader?
Aye.
Mayor Garcia?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Now the fun begins.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right, so.
Okay.
Oh, do we want to do the ordinance first?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So moving on to ordinances, we have ordinance number 882, the adoption of the 2018 budget on our final reading.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. Ordinance number 882 is in front of you this evening for second reading. The only change in this ordinance from the prior one presented on first reading would be under section 3, Capital Projects Fund. That was previously $50,000. Based on the budget workshop from the other evening, the council chose to allocate an expenditure up to $150,000 for the Sky High structural improvements. And then there was $50,000, so that now totals $200,000 under the Capital Projects Fund, making a total expenditures of $7,016,070. That was the only change based upon the actual ordinance. There were other changes that will be in the actual budget, which is the previous ones we talked about in the general fund. If you've got any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, staff would hope that you would approve that this evening.
Any questions? Wishes of council?
I move to approve ordinance number 882, an ordinance adopting the amended budget and appropriating sums of money for the city of Monte Vista, Colorado for the calendar year beginning January 1st, 2018, ending December 31st, 2018 on second and final reading.
Second.
Any other discussion? Nita?
Councilor Schrader?
Aye.
Councilor Lorenz,
Aye.
Councilor Martinez,
Aye.
Councilor Schlegel,
Aye.
Mayor Garcia.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I did just want to add a couple of items, pretty minor. One about the Business Institute last night. A number of you were there, and I thought it was top rate presenters, very good information. I was very impressed, not only by the presenters' knowledge, but the fact that all of them basically said, hey, here's my email address, here's my phone number. Be happy to talk to anybody that was there about any of those topics we brought up. And there was really some excellent information there. I did not get to talk to them today, but I'm thinking that we should be able to get access to the slides that were presented. Really was a good event. It was well attended. I did want to recognize Azarel for we've had her interacting with DCI and going to some of their trainings, and when she brought this idea forward to the council and she asked me, I said, yeah, I think that's great, and obviously you all approved it, and the city's contribution both financially and on the advertising standpoint and everything was great. So I think that was a really good asset to our community, and it kind of follows the plan of providing more of these. I appreciate the chamber's involvement as well. Really looking forward to that continuing relationship. The other thing that I did want to bring up kind of as a heads up, so at the URA, we've been talking about a number of ways to move that project forward, and one of the discussions we've been having, as the Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem know, is about a line of credit that would make the whole process a little simpler, much of which would be reimbursable through program income and sales of lots and such. And I did get good news today from San Luis Valley Federal Bank. They were definitely interested in doing it, and they had to do the attorney thing on it, and their attorneys are fine. The mayor suggested perhaps the Guzlo building would be a good asset for that purpose. And actually, they thought that sounded perfect, along with the 2 garages that we own that are right adjacent. So what will be coming forward to the council, not quite sure of the timing exactly. We'll have to do all that banking paperwork. But the notion is that that property would be assigned to the URA. The lending instrument would be yearly to follow all the proper governmental lending. And the URA, as a quasi-government organization, would be the sole debtor, not the city. And we would ask the council at some point, as that goes forward, to assign that property to the URA with a reverter clause, so that once the project's concluded, it would come back to the city. Kind of an interesting way to use one of the city's assets that we haven't found any really good uses for, so that's pretty exciting. So that shall be forthcoming, but I think we're making some good headway there. And then one other item is that I discussed with council, I think in an internal memo, was that we had an offer regarding, we had the folks that own the church at 256 Broadway. We're looking for somebody to maybe give that to. And in a strange coincidence, a gentleman came in. I was supposed to have a call with these folks, and the gentleman came in who wants to start a new church. And I said, wow, have I got a deal for you? And so I put those 2 parties together. They seemed really excited about it, both the property owners, and he was just, kind of floored. So hopefully that'll progress, and, I asked both parties to keep us in the loop. And, obviously the city wasn't really looking for another property, so this might be Providence. So I thought that was just a kind of a nice coincidence, and maybe everyone will be happy, and we can get another church open there in that building, which, while it has its issues, certainly has beautiful windows, and to see it get used again would be really nice. So that's all I have this evening. If anyone has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Questions for Court?
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Sergeant Martinez, are you here to do the police report or just answer any questions?
Just answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Sergeant Martinez?
Come on, we can start on
Okay. Moving on to the Public Works report.
I'll let you, Jason, start with this. You guys have my report in the packet, and I wasn't gonna really go over, too much of that report. I thought my time might be better spent to present to you something that you guys made abundantly clear at the first work session that you'd like to see us as Public Works do, and that's create for Monte Vista a pavement condition rating inspection thing. So, maybe? You just want to hit in, Nita? You can. As I said earlier, council asked us to develop a rating system for our pavement. Most of our pavement structures are in need of repair to various degrees. Maybe I need to turn around here. Try to position myself where I can see and hit in, please.
Well, maybe this answers your state of the art.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Nothing else. There's several programs out there that you can buy that will do a pavement rating for you. They're expensive. You have to pay an annual service plan, plus you have to buy the program. I've used a visual type inspection form in the past. So when you guys made it clear, I went ahead and developed a little book that kind of covers that. The initial one I did back in my younger days actually came from South Dakota LTAP. LTAP is a training thing specifically for road supervisors and engineers. Colorado has an LTAP. It's actually sponsored by the University of Colorado. That was a conference I actually went to last week. Was sponsored by the University of Colorado and the LTAP. It's a good opportunity for us. So the information, I don't know if it's coming up. There we go. So anyways, what is the purpose of a pavement rating system? Rating the condition of pavements provides the user with a means to prioritize what repairs need to be done and when they need to be done. The pavement condition rating system uses real-life defects and conditions as a gauge to determine what pavement treatments should be used when and where. Okay? And then, of course, continue planned preventative maintenance of pavement structures are more cost-effective and extend the life cycle of a pavement structure. The life cycle of a pavement has a sharp curve downward that can dramatically increase the cost of maintenance. The next slide is the newest life cycle for pavement and associated costs. So the red line is actually a pavement life cycle. And an excellent pavement is one that's freshly built, 3-inch asphalt mat, and you can see at about 13 years after it was initially laid, it's at 12% of its life. What I said earlier is if you do planned, scheduled preventative maintenances, which are crack sealing, chip sealing, slurry seals, those average cost is about $2 per square foot. Okay, that's roughly the thing. If you wait until, on this graph here, year 10, you have a 40% drop in the pavement quality and roughly 75% of its life is gone. If you wait a little further, which is here, and you do one of pavement resurfacing or something along those lines, those costs go up to $4. And the big thing to notice is the life cycle curve. This prolongs the life pretty good. This, you get an initial, but it drops off relatively quick. And then, of course, if you get down in here, you're looking between $12 and $16 a square foot. So what I did is to propose the book that's circling around with council. It's based in part of the Oregon Department of Transportation condition rating form, which is in that book. There's also another reference that I was able to pick up this last week from LTAP, which is the Federal Highway Administration Pavement Distress Manual. And that's listed here. To choose uniform pavement sections, I went ahead and I chose our HUTF, which is what you guys certify every year, the mayor signs, that certifies our mileage in the street. Every street is broke down by segments. So using that, then we can look at specific segments of road, because Second Street doesn't necessarily have the same condition all the way through, okay? So we can do that. Created a form that anyone, whether you have experience or not, can actually go out and look at it and basically use it for the common distresses, your transverse cracks, your longitudinal cracks, alligator cracking, rutting, potholes, pushing and shoving. If you see on the edges where the pavement's being pushed up, you see that all the time at the railroad tracks and stuff. Those type of things. And they all carry a weight which equals 100 points. 100 points is a perfect pavement, just got laid, absolutely perfect. As you go down, it goes from excellent, good, fair, poor, very poor. If you hit the poor to very poor, really your only option at that point is a complete rehab, okay? So there's the two manuals, the form, pretty simple. This didn't show up very well on the slide, so I went ahead and did the number ratings. Very good pavements go from 100 down to 96. Good pavements rate from 95 to 80. Fair, 75 to 50. Poor, 45 to 25. Very poor, 20 to 5. The big thing to note that on excellent pavements, it's increments of 1. Once you get to the good pavements down, it changes to increments of 5. So if you do that evaluation, and let's say it scores an 84, you round it up to an 85, and that's what it is. I mean, it's just semantics. It doesn't really change the condition of the pavement. A very good pavement. This first picture is a very fresh pavement. It was just laid down, only a couple of days old. This is one that would be at the end, or that 96 rating. Still looks good, but you can see it's been oxidized. It doesn't have the black color to it. Same thing, so because they're so close, the same one, but a good pavement here on the lower end, you can see signs of cracking developing, okay? But that's still a good pavement. You can still do minor surface treatments, a chip seal, a slurry seal, even crack seal would make that and extend the life of that pavement pretty good. Fair. This one looks like there's a lot of cracks, but they've all been crack sealed, so it's watertight. The death of a pavement, as the old engineers that taught me told me, is water, water, water. You know, water is what will kill a pavement. The second one doesn't show up very well, but the cracks are getting closer together. And then this one looks good, except for there's multiple patches. And then if you see the white areas, those are what they call water bleeding. Those are places where the water is either coming up through the surface and bleeding out on the highway, or they're being held on the highway for extended periods of time, which that right there will relate to a structural failure. That pavement is going to need a full reconstruction. A poor pavement, you have ones, multiple cracks all the way through. You have ones here where you have more cracks in the drive lanes. That's actually pushing traffic over, and then of course, alligator cracking, okay? So that's a poor road. Very poor. Same thing that you saw on the other slide, but if you notice there's gaps here. where the pavement's actually been pushed out and gone. Can't really fix that. The only way to really fix it is to cut and relay that entire thing. This one here, same thing. I like this picture because it shows that there was an overlay done on it one time. But if you follow the cracks, you'll see that they extend out through to the new pavement. And then, of course, that one's just gone. It's a minefield. So, that's it. Any questions? My plan is I don't need, you guys kind of told me what you wanted. As long as I get a nod and you guys feel that that's comfortable, that book is ready for me to go. I would like to have it done before the end of the year. Of course, that's weather dependent. But if there's any questions on it, I know I kind of blew through it pretty quick, but we can get something and then we can, at least in future years, prioritize where we need to put our money. So, okay. Any questions on my report? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
City clerk's report.
Good evening, Council. So the first thing I have tonight for you, this came in to me after you received the packets, but I did receive a letter from Larry Roberts, and he is requesting to be appointed to the Urban Renewal Authority. And he said he attended the meeting which was Tuesday night, and would like to be a part of this for the city of Monte Vista. So that is something that I need a decision on from you guys to whether or not to allow him to be on the URA.
Which is the council.
I move to appoint Larry Roberts to the Urban Renewal Authority.
Second.
Any other discussion?
Which term is that? Because they're all staggered, right, on the URA?
That is
You
true.
can stay on as long as you
Yeah.
I do remember they
Yeah.
were staggered.
Yeah, because you have a couple that are 4, 3, 2, and
Whichever the
1.
longest unexpired one is.
That works for me.
So you can let him know that we appointed him to the longest term possible.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so,
So anyway, I guess we'll have to vote.
yes,
I just jumped the gun and assumed.
sorry. Counselor Martinez?
Aye.
Counselor Schrader?
Aye.
Counselor Lorenz?
Aye.
Counselor Schleba?
Aye.
Mayor Garcia?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. So moving into my report, you all got my report, and in the report was a copy of the CML newsletter and also Senate Bill House Bill 16-1309. I know that Judge Zollers had touched on this, and that is something that I wanted to bring to your attention, that Governor Hickenlooper did present this on November 1st, that he is proposing $2 million to be funded to the mandate of this House bill to promote the use of public defenders for indigent defendants. When you read the House bill, it does state in there that the council will provide for defendants who are indigent and are facing jail time who are in custody If this proposal passes, this will allow for municipal courts to file a request for money to the state for portions of invoices for counsel when appointing to a defendant. I don't know if that is passed yet. This was just in the recent CML newsletter that we received on November 10th, so I just wanted to bring that to your attention. So I'm going to just kind of go into follow up with some of the things that Barb had talked to you about. One of the big things that I'm working on now that I will be presenting to you in December's meeting, one of December's meetings, is the fee schedule and update. That is one of the things that I'm working on with all the department heads, including the chief with the model traffic code, because Barb is right, there is a lot of inconsistencies with what the court charges and what the police officers put on the tickets. So the chief and I are working on getting that put together. I've been working with Forrest to make sure that all the other departments get in what their fees, what they want to change, add, delete. So we've been working on that. I've got a lot of responses back and just a couple things left to do, and that will be presented to you in December. We wanted to present it in a whole, not just the court module part of those fees. We wanted to do the statewide. And again, like you said, Madam Mayor, the traffic model code does need to be updated yearly. We're hoping, Rebecca and I are making sure that on a yearly basis, that in December, we come to you in December or January with those new fees, if changed from a previous year. If they haven't changed, then we will just let you know that the traffic model code hasn't changed, and we'll update it as it needs to be changed in our code. The other thing that we've been working on with Barb is on jailable offenses. I talked to the chief and a lot of the officers, and if they feel that it's a jailable offense, they need to write it into the county. That way, we're not stuck with those bills, because right now, all jails across the state are going up in fees for coverage for their inmates. As far as the collections goes, I did speak with Forrest, and Forrest told me to go ahead and move forward with Rebecca and I. We're going to look at taking some collection training, and we will be doing collection calls once a month. That's something that I'm also working on to present to you guys. What line do we want to draw, and where do we want to collect? Do we want to collect on something that's $17.50? Do we want, what area do we want to stop and just close the case, and where do we want to continue to collect on? The 4-hour turnaround that Judge Zollers had talked to you about, I had talked to Forrest, and I do have a city cell phone, and I have agreed that when that comes into effect the first of the year, I will be on call 24 hours. What that will take place is when I receive the notice, then that following day I will call Judge Zollers or whoever our judge is at that time and make an appearance with phone conference with the judge. That way there are no defendants that are being held in custody on a municipal warrant out of Monte Vista. Judge Zollers has given Rebecca and myself the authority to go ahead and issue PR bonds if they're picked up on warrants. I do have a current list of active warrants that we have through the city. Rebecca and I are going through this. All traffic violations are being sent to the DMV per Judge Zollers. The older traffic case, or the older criminal cases, we're pulling all those cases, and we have them ready. So we'll sit down and go through all these cases with Judge Zollers to see which ones we've lost jurisdiction on. And I've got where the Colorado State Patrol, this is the list that they sent me, and she will call me if they have a warrant that's picked up. She's going to call me automatically and let me know, hey, this person on your list has been picked up, so I can go ahead and issue a PR bond, and we can not have them be detained on a municipal warrant. A couple other things was that the diversion program is something that we spoke with Judge Zollers about. Tyler Woods runs the diversion program. He runs it for both Monte Vista and Alamosa. And on the juvenile tickets that we do get, instead of scheduling them for court, what we're doing is going to send them, the juvenile and their parents, a packet for the diversion program. Then we're going to send an email to the diversion program letting them know that we've given the packet to the parent and to the defendant. They have 10 days to respond. If they don't respond to the diversion program in 10 days, and we get notification from the diversion program, that's when we will put them on the schedule for court. Other than that, the juveniles will have the option for the diversion program before going to court and give the juvenile a way to not have that on their record. The traffic tickets is something that Judge Zollers has also rendered with the staff. So when traffic tickets come in, we handle those up front in the office and they don't go to court. Unless they plead not guilty. If they plead not guilty, then we schedule them for court.
You're talking about infractions, right?
Correct, traffic infractions. So previously phone conferences weren't allowed in court. So now that we have confirmation that we can do phone conferences, we will have a lot of defendants that will actually show up, and because they'll be able to do it by phone. Whereas before they weren't allowed to do it by phone, they had to be present.
I suppose the only issue is going to be whether you can record the conversations.
And that's something I talked to Forrest, because I do have the city cell phone. We can put it up in front of the mic and put it on speaker.
That doesn't sound too high tech to me. It's not.
It's not, but that's just right now. That's what we have right now until we can get phone service or whatnot in the courtroom. We do have that available for us. Community service, that is something that I did speak with Rob Vance, Public Works Director. He agreed that he has no problem putting people to work for public service. We just need to check with the city attorney about liability on doing that, but that is something that he's agreed to go ahead and move forward with if we need to.
Can I add an adjunct one to that? Sorry.
Absolutely.
One of the thought processes that we're having on that community service, if it's viable, one of the issues we have is with weeds in various places. And this might be an opportunity to deal with some of those particular ones. I'm thinking, we all try to work through this issue with the ditch companies in particular. But there's manpower that could be utilized, like along Sequoia in particular comes to mind, and some other places where we could actually address that problem with useful community service. So just thought I'd throw that out there.
If I'm not mistaken, didn't we already have a draft of that that's pretty much ready? That, I mean, obviously we'll have to review it with modern, or with what's going on now, but I mean, I thought we had already worked on that a number of years ago. We just never brought it to council. Because I remember seeing it, that we had talked about this before, like probably my first year on, that we had said that was an option that we wanted to do. It just has never come up.
We'll look for that.
What I don't know, and you might want to think about, is there's any liability issues to the city. I don't know, like how comprehensive the insurance is.
We'll look at that as well. Yeah, I think we can deal with that.
I have to say, and I've only been here almost a year now, but me not having a lot of knowledge and history of the workings of courts, I took a lot of learning from the previous judge. I have to tell you, the court that we had last week was the smoothest court I've ever seen in my life. And it just, having the sentencings the same day as they're entering a plea, and everything just seemed to click and run very smooth, and we had a lot of payments come through, that, okay, you pay this amount, then your case is closed. And the pre-trial conferences that Karen was here to do on the 8th, it was amazing to watch, and the defendants were very grateful. Some of them were repeat offenders, but a lot of them were first-time offenders that were trying to make it and make those payments, and they were resolved the same day. So that was a huge plus for us, and a lot of time saving for my department as well. The other thing I just wanted to let you all, a couple things. First of all, Rebecca's been here 2 full months now, and as of Monday, I have promoted her. She is going to take over the courts. Her knowledge is just outstanding. She deserves to be in charge of the courts. She works really well with Barb, and I just think it's going to be, she's an absolute true asset to the city. So I wanted to let you guys know that. The last thing is I got some really good news today. So I'm taking courses for my Municipal Clerks Association certification, and my mentor called me today, and hopefully if all goes well, I will have full scholarship for all 60 credit courses for my accreditation. That's it. Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
IT?
I don't have anything to present. If you have any questions about the report, I'm willing to take them.
Any questions on the IT report in your packet? All right, thank you.
The only thing I would suggest is just with Judge Zollers, with what we talked about, seeing if there's a possibility to do.
I already relayed most of the messages that she had mentioned to Jim already.
See, we are high tech.
In some areas.
Yeah.
Once in a while.
Once in a while.
Jason?
Nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. Seems like I spent a lot of time in the car this week. Did watch the Veterans Parade and went uptown to the Memorial Park and witnessed a spectacular program, as always, put together by the Veterans Group and spearheaded by Mayor Garcia. Attended a holiday festival meeting on Monday to fine-tune the final details for a holiday festival. So I hope you're all planning on attending. The mayor and I went to a groundbreaking ceremony at the Del Norte Hospital. They're adding 8,000 square feet to their current facility, and they're truly excited to be able to offer more services to the community, and I think it's a year completion date. They have dug a few holes out there, so it's going to be a long year. Also yesterday afternoon, I attended the business development seminar. Was quite impressed with their presentations, and I hope all those who attended came away with some good information that they can use. And also attended the URA meeting this week. Next week, I hope to calm down. It'll calm down because I won't be here.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Carol.
Attended planning and zoning, and we had our public hearing on special review use, and there'll be another meeting at the end of the month. They're hoping to solidify some things on a few ordinances. I'm doing some research, and so we'll see how that goes, and we'll have that report to council. The Veterans Day Parade was very well attended. I'm glad the band was able to come out this year as well. Both bands, middle school and the high school. I think that was really great. And I think, just seeing the crowd every year, it just gets a little bit bigger and bigger, and I think that's kind of what we want to continue to develop and continue to grow that park. The budget session, attended the budget session. I think, we with the situation that we're in, I think all the city staff for putting in all the hard work and effort and time to be able to make that happen, and being able to work within the bounds that we've done. So that's it.
Thank you.
Well, I would echo what Councilor Schrader said. It's been a crazy week. I did not attend the Veterans Day Parade. I was disappointed to miss that. I did hear from a number of the community that was a really great event. And I'd just like to highlight that something that Rob Vance continuously says is that we do a lot of things in this community with very little, and that is due to the tremendous willingness of everybody on the city staff to step up and make things happen. And we're very, very grateful for that, and I can't begin to tell you how much it means to me to be able to know that we do the Veterans Day, observe the park. That means a lot to me. Also attended the planning and zoning meeting as well as the budget work session. Planning and zoning was of course a special review use, and then we did the budget session, and budget's a little tight, but we're gonna keep on working on it. We're gonna keep on pushing forward. We're gonna continue to make progress. Every year we make progress. Every year it's looking just a little bit better, and we're gonna continue moving in that direction. Had the economic development meeting as well, down at Boogie's Restaurant in Del Norte, and we had the presentation from Proximity Malt with Jake Capron, and he just talked a little bit about the process that it was to come into the community, build his business that he has, and the amount of people that he hired, the type of training that went into that. It was a really great presentation, and he was very grateful between working with Marty and Bonnie and the city, working with him to get the sewer going. All of that was really a good way to work together, and I think we can continue moving forward in that direction. We also had the Crane Fest meeting. That's already on the radar, so that's going to be huge. That was Tuesday night. Wednesday night we had the Downtown Colorado Incorporation come in and talk with that. It was a tremendous amount of great information. Walked away with a whole book full of notes. I think the things that are happening in this city are, there's a lot of movement in a very positive direction, and we're going to continue moving in that direction. We're going to continue working together to build the city. And that's all I got.
Did you want to do your MOU thing?
So I never got it. So.
What's that?
We have it.
Oh, we need to get
All right.
a copy of that.
Yes. Well, thank you very much. So I do have the MOU from the Crane Fest committee. We had that meeting on Tuesday night, and they had asked that we do our normal MOU that we do every year. I think the Crane Fest is a really great thing for the community. It brings a lot of people from out of town in, and it does promote tourism. And if anybody wants to take a look at the MOU, I would like to ask the rest of council if they'd be willing to make a formal decision on that tonight.
Wishes of council?
No changes from previous years?
No, it's exactly the same.
MOU.
I move to renew our MOU with the Crane Festival.
Second.
Any other discussions? Ada?
Councilor Schrader?
Aye.
Councilor Lorenz?
Aye.
Councilor Schleibach?
Aye.
Councilor Martinez?
Aye.
Mayor Garcia?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right. Is that it?
That's it.
Thank you, Joe. Carol's pretty much covered it all. I love you dearly, Carol, but I would like to see my husband more this next week than I've seen this. We've spent a lot of time in the car together this week, so. The only thing that's upcoming is roller derby this Saturday out at Sky High. So if you don't have anything going on, check out the roller derby. And then of course Holiday Festival's coming up first Saturday in December, December 2nd. So little bit of change of plans this year. The fireworks will be at the high school. They're in the stadium, and we're going to have like a tailgating party, and the junior class parents are going to be doing s'mores and hot cocoa, and we're going to try to get some other groups out there doing some other little vendor options or items. So it'll be fun, it'll be different, so we encourage everyone to come out and participate in that. If there's nothing else, we are actually adjourned this time until December 2nd?
7th.
7th at 6 p.m. Thanks.